Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Canucks Conversation, brought to you as always by the great folks over at Zephyr Epic. You can use promo code HockeySeason, capital H, capital S, all one word, Hockey Season. That will get you $5 off your order at ZephyrEpic.com. That is ZEPHYR Epic. Check them out on all platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, whatever platform you choose to use. They've got you covered for all of your trading card needs. So be sure to go check out the fine folks over at Zephyr Epic.
No yelling.
Like I said, no yelling. Don't yell at the cashier. Promo code Hockey Season also works in stores, what we're alluding to, but don't yell it. Don't yell it at anybody. Hockey Season is the promo code over at Zephyr Epic, but if you choose to shop online, be sure to use that promo code and enjoy free shipping on any order Canada-wide over $50. My name's Dave Gugelli. I'm joined as always by the man who built the place, Chris Faber, and I've been kicked out of our studio. I'm at home, if people can't tell. I know the people on the YouTube can tell. I've been kicked out of our studio. I was told not to come into work today, which is not what you want to hear, but we've got a very special guest. I hate to say it because he's sitting in my chair and I didn't really have much of a say in it. Mr. Frank Seravalli of Daily Faceoff is joining us on this episode of Canucks Conversation. Frank, how are you doing?
I'm good. It would have been a little tight with you here, I think, in Faberville.
Yes, it would have.
It's not the biggest studio in here, but it gets the job done. And I think the way that this show is broadcasted makes it feel like it's a pretty big studio.
You would think, watching at home as I join you guys once a week during the season this year on Wednesdays, shameless plug.
You betcha.
That it would be a tad larger in here.
No,
we got two bigger guys here, so
no, it's gonna get hot.
Like we would have squished you.
Yeah, it's going to get very hot in here. Let's and Frank's in here. The other thing you're missing out on here, Quads, is we have an awesome pack to open from our friends at Zephyr Epic. This is the 2021-22 hockey credentials. And Quads, we do these boxes that, they come with like 24 packs in the box, and it's all, you get a bunch of pretty decent cards for like $120 normally for a box or so. This is a $169 box.
Nice.
6 packs in there. So we're talking like $30 a pack here just to kind of pull. I'll go first here, and then I'll talk my way through Frank pulling. So we're looking for autographs, we're looking for jersey cards, all that fun stuff. And most importantly, we're looking for some Canucks so we can give some away to the kids, of course. So I got a David Pastrnak, Evgeny Kuznetsov, a ticket access of Seth Jarvis. Very cool looking card. These ones are great. These are good cards. A rookie of William Eklund, a Cale Makar, and a Nathan McKinnon. No autograph for me, so that means Frank pretty much has to pull an autograph card here. And I know, Frank, you got some experience with the kids getting into Pokemon cards quite a bit, and they got a ton of those over on Zephyr Epic as well. I know you noticed all the Pikachus I got in the office here when you came in.
Yeah, you big Pokemon guy. Let's see. We got Rasmus Dahlin, a Mitch Marner, a Shane Pinto rookie card.
There we go.
That's not bad. Unsigned.
Okay.
No, he's unsigned.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say it's a signed card.
What is this? A Credentials Star Knight, 3rd star, Chris Kreider. I don't know if it means anything.
Hey, that looks pretty fun.
And we got a Petey.
Hey,
look at that.
That's what
there
I'm
you
talking
go.
about right there. Elias Pettersson. Nice to see it. That is excellent news, of course.
And the Tyler Toffoli to wrap it up.
And for those who don't know, if you have kids and you're listening to the show right now, send us a message. We will drive these cards out to you, give them to the kids. Quads, I know we did that in Victoria a little bit as well. We had, was it 3 kids? We gave 3 full boxes of cards.
Yes, and shout out to all the fans in Victoria that came up and said hello to us, and listeners of the show saying they were from the island and they were there and they were excited to meet us. That was really cool. So shout out to everybody. And yes, of course, we gave some cards away, which we're going to continue to do all throughout the season.
There you go, Petey.
Love it.
Going to a new home.
Excellent. I did want to bring up something. We're going to talk about Victoria a little bit later in the show. We got Frank here, so we're going to do a full season kind of, not necessarily preview, but just get Frank's opinions on the Vancouver Canucks and where they're at. But we're going to talk karaoke a little bit later. And Frank, I had to ask you.
Are you a karaoke guy?
Big time.
Okay.
Big time. I'll sing anything by Creed. I'll sing Hero by Enrique Iglesias is like my creme de la creme. That's my number 1 song. What's your go-to?
You wouldn't catch me doing that.
Nothing. Not once?
No, I wouldn't do it.
Oh, man. I remember in Montreal, we had the PHWA karaoke night. John Liu in a suit, the short suit.
He's a performer.
He was very good. He's one of the better ones I've seen in the media. Brendan Batchelor, play-by-play voice here for us for Sportsnet 650 there. He's more of like the punk rock band. He's got that little I think he did Teenage Dirtbag, and he
Okay, that's a good one.
Teenage, and Batch nailed it. You don't have a song at all. You're not the guy to get up there, no matter how many drinks.
Nope.
Okay.
Just right. I don't know why that is. Someone that's been on national TV, done a lot of different stuff on camera. That's not my thing.
Okay, fair enough. Quads, do you want to tell Frank your go-to song, your Vanilla Ice track? You did a little bit of you did perform this on the beach run, I think, as well.
I did. I did it as our intro song. Ice Ice Baby is my go-to song. But if Frank doesn't sing, there goes the next 20 minutes we had planned for the show.
Yeah, I just scrapped the whole outline. I pranked Frank a little bit and sent him a fake outline.
Yeah.
We're actually going to.
It's good to be here, guys. I'm out.
But hey, we got Frank here. Let's dive into some of the Vancouver Canucks topics. And like I said, we're going to circle back because 10-0 loss in the preseason to the Calgary Flames last night, a very AHL roster. We'll dive into that a ton. But I think with Frank here giving kind of a league-wide view on the Vancouver Canucks, I think we just want to dive into what your overall feeling is, because we talk about it every single day here. We spend a lot of time throughout the offseason discussing. I think everybody's kind of in an agreement here of it feels like what we're going to see from the Vancouver Canucks is they're hoping for a chance to just be in a wild card position. Is that the outside view of the Vancouver Canucks as well?
Well, that's the hope. But here's the thing. My prediction is I think they get there. And I think this division is incredibly difficult. I think you've got a few authentic Stanley Cup contenders in it. I also think the Central Division creates an opening for the Pacific to grab all 5 remaining spots. And I really like the way this Vancouver offseason unfolded for a number of reasons. One, I liked that the drama and the hysteria that sort of surrounded this team, the soap opera stuff, seemed to go away. 2, I'm banking on a healthy Thatcher Demko playing like he did down the stretch. And 3, I really like how they revamped this defense core. There's not, a super sexy addition. There's no headliner, no $9 million guy that you've added to your roster, no Erik Karlsson. But I don't think they needed that. I think they needed proper support from 1 through 6. And I think Susie and I think Ian Cole are going to be really big additions to this team. And you take all of that and you mix that up with what should be a lot better compete. 10-0 preseason loss notwithstanding from Rick Tocchet on the bench. And I think you've got all the makings for a team to make a pretty significant improvement.
I think what a lot
compelling or not?
Yeah, and I agree with. I mean, there's a lot of our very positive fans who are looking at it of like, okay, the steps that you're going to see from the Stars is also going to be the big difference. But ultimately, I think you nailed it. It's the coaching staff and how they're going to change this team, because we saw the point totals last year for Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes. Doesn't mean anything. Like, what was the biggest lacking thing that you saw from the Canucks? You mentioned structure, kind of just new coaching staff coming in. We're pretty excited to see what this coaching staff is going to do with this squad, specifically what they have on the back end. Goaltending, you meant like Thatcher Demko coming back healthy. What would be the thing that would maybe keep this team from being able to get to that spot? Because you sound pretty confident, Frank. I'm not going to lie.
What would keep them from it? Lack of consistency, a poor start, injury. I mean, those are all really things that add up over time. Any one of those things could sink your season. And I think what held this team back last year was defense. I thought what they were asking of some guys, especially some of the younger guys that didn't have a ton of experience, they were asking for players to play over their heads. And I don't think that exists anymore.
Okay, I got a question for you, Frank. Where in the Pacific does this team rank? Because we just saw them lose 10-0 to the Calgary Flames. So everybody's wondering, like, how do you have the Pacific kind of playing out? Because you just said you think all 5 teams are going to get in, but does that mean the Canucks are in the 5th spot?
Yeah, I think what you're looking at is one of the wild card positions. I think, by the way, like, I don't put any stock at all in the preseason, and especially that 10-0. Like, look at the lineup that the Canucks iced. Like, they weren't bringing the goods. And I do think from a pride and competitive standpoint, you should probably try and knuckle down a little bit more to make sure it doesn't get out of hand like that. And that's surely something that they're talking about today, is that preseason, whether it matters or not, you need to put in an effort. But when it comes to sizing up the whole Pacific, I've got it in my head something like this. Edmonton, Vegas, then LA, followed by the Flames, Canucks, and Kraken.
If I were to ask you about the 4 teams you have above the Canucks, which one are you least confident? Is it the Kraken just right ahead of the Vancouver Canucks, or which one would you be least confident about?
So I had the Kraken out.
Okay.
Kraken are out of the playoffs in Frank's ranking, which is what I was going to respond to, and I think that's very interesting. You have explain that. The Kraken below the Canucks. Explain that.
I just think when you look at the year Seattle had last year, I don't want to say it was an anomaly or a fluke. They had so many guys have career years that I really have. It feels like it was lightning in a bottle. That it was so many guys shooting percentages were crazy high. They got production out of players that you were not. Can Daniel Sprong go and have the same season again this year? Maybe. I mean, but probably pretty unlikely. I also think their goaltending was atrocious, and it's not getting any better, I don't think. So that coupled with some regression from some other players, could the Kraken be one of those wild card teams? Could you flip flop any one of the Flames, Canucks, or Kraken in that ranking? Of course you could. I could see that happening where the Kraken are 4 and the Flames are 6, but I've got the Canucks right there with those teams.
Jim Rutherford gave the quote, and I think everybody in the market agreed with it, that the Canucks have a playoff team if everything goes right. And Aaron, can we hear it? Just can we pull up the clip where Rutherford said they have a playoff team if everything goes right?
It's actually just an instrumental for Frank.
Every season you have to judge the management and the coaches, and that's what we do in sports. Okay, I think, to be very to the point, the changes that we made, we have a playoff team if everything goes right. Okay, your goalie has to be good, your specialty teams have to be good, you can't get into a lot of injuries. Okay, no, I'm not saying if one of those things go wrong we can't still make it, because we have some impact players that can win games by themselves. Okay, but we want to get to a point that we have enough in our lineup that you can have a few things go wrong on a regular basis and overcome that. But to be frank with you, that's my opinion. It may not be these guys' opinion, but that's how I feel about the team we have right now.
So it seemed like everybody in the market agreed with that statement. So I'm not going to ask you if you agree with that, because I'm assuming to some level you do. But my question to you is, instead, when we look at teams like the Flames and the Kraken, are they also in that conversation of being where, hey, if everything goes right, we can be a playoff team? Like, I guess my question is, do the Canucks just need things to go more right for them than they do for those teams?
I think that's a really fair way to put it, because I just mentioned the idea of flip-flopping them in the standings. Jacob Markstrom comes out and has another .892 season. I'm sorry, I don't care. The Flames aren't making it. I don't care how well Jonathan Huberdeau plays or how many goals he scores, or, Mackenzie Weegar, how well he plays in the back end. It's not going to matter. There are fatal flaws, I think, to all these teams. And let's be real. When you look at the Canucks from the last few seasons, more or less everything that could go wrong has. Right? The poor starts. They essentially tanked their season a couple times before you even got to U.S. Thanksgiving. You had last year that coincided with a really tough run for Thatcher Demko to start, and then a few months on the shelf. So, those things really take its toll. And I think the estimation and expectation setting from Jim Rutherford was really fair. He's acknowledging that this team isn't perfect, that they do have flaws, but there's also an acknowledgement there that there are some really good pieces on this team, in this lineup, that can be game breakers. Pettersson, Hughes, Demko. And it's the same sort of triumvirate, the same sort of core that we've been talking about the last few years that I think can really do something. And when you consider, like, here's really maybe the better way to frame your question, I think, from the total, sort of 30,000 foot view of, like, let's look 5 years down the line. If you had to pick a team in its current state, with its players at the ages that they are, with the contractual situations with the way that they are, which team would you pick? For me, I think I there's a lot to say about the Kraken and their cap space and some of the prospects that they have coming, but I'm not certain that I'm picking any of those teams ahead of the Canucks.
Yeah, I think you look at the core and you feel very good about the core. And I think the conversation when Jim Benning was the general manager was, how can you not surround this core with much better players? Feels like there's a little bit of a different look. Pius Suter is obviously an example. Even Teddy Bluger kind of as your fourth line center.
Got to improve the
round out
penalty kill.
pieces. Exactly. And Ian Cole's been talked about throughout training camp as a guy who is going to lead on the ice, but off the ice and during practice, he's a guy who's a veteran player, penalty kill specialist. He's the kind of guy that can help in that way. I'm curious with this core, and specifically we're talking, JT Miller now part of it, Elias Pettersson, Brock Besser kind of in the background of the core after he was kind of one of the top guys a couple of years ago. But Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes are the big ones there with Thatcher Demko. The question that I think a lot of Canucks fans are having with this team is, well, is this the last year that this core is going to really get an opportunity? Like, is this the final go where the new management group has had a year and a half to put in what they expect, bring in the coaching staff that they want? Do you think this could be the last year of the core if things, don't go perfectly and they make the playoffs?
I don't think it needs to go perfectly, but I would say that the leash is definitely shorter, because no matter what, I think, and people have asked this sort of question of, like, well, what happens with Pettersson and this, important RFA year that's coming up? How does that all work itself out? I don't see him going anywhere. I don't see the Canucks allowing a talent like that, a really core piece, to get away. And I think maybe you begin to reinvent if let's say this all goes to hell and the Canucks have an awful season, and it's not just that they're missing the playoffs, but they're clearly a ways away from the playoffs. That's when I think you have to dismantle the pieces around those players. The unfortunate part for the Canucks might be that it might be a year too late with someone like JT Miller, for instance, to really begin to disassemble things and try and do something different. That's where it starts to get tricky. But the actual, like, when I say core, I'm thinking like Adams nucleus, like we're talking Pettersson, Hughes, Demko, etc.
Yeah, because when you have,
and it's not beyond that. Like, it's what's the core makeup of your team,
right? And now with JT Miller's new contract kicking in, it's almost like his contract kind of makes him a part of the core for the next 7 seasons. I think with Pettersson, a lot of worry from Canucks fans are, okay, maybe I'd probably frame my last question a little bit wrong about things going perfectly, but for Pettersson, if things go poorly, and I'm talking like off-ice distractions, not necessarily like they don't win a round of the playoffs and get to the second round and give him that opportunity, look like the winning is coming down the road. Do you think that this organization just needs to kind of buckle down here to keep Pettersson here? Like, would that be enough to make Pettersson want to stay here? Like, what would be the thing that you think might drive Pettersson to want to go elsewhere in a similar way to Matthew Tkachuk has in the past?
It would have to really blow up, and it would have to be dramatic, and it would have to be like, I take him at his word when he says that he wants to be a Canuck. I believe that. I don't think he's looking to go anywhere. I've never really gotten that sense. I think the true reason why he isn't signed right now is not because he doesn't or is unsure and needs the Canucks to prove something. It's because they probably just haven't shown him the right deal. He thinks he's, expanding on a 102-point season and bursting into the 110, 115 point range, or whatever that might be, that makes him in the top 10 elite scorers year after year after year. And kind of the crazy part about the way his career's unfolded is, even though he had 102 points last year, I feel like he's just starting to scratch the surface. And so you take what he has and he's betting on himself.
Right.
Let's say he slides back to 85 points this season. Still a pretty decent year by most standards, and it's all part of its team dependent, so I don't want to take that out of a vacuum. But let's say that happens. The same deal I think that the Canucks are currently offering is probably still on the table for him. But if he goes out and either duplicates or improves on the season he had last year, you're talking about a different stratosphere in terms of contract, I think. And that's sort of how I think it's being viewed.
So, as an observer, do you need to see him go out and do it again before you agree with Andrei Kuzmenko that he's the best centerman in the league, Frank? Like, do you need to see it again? Like, where does Pettersson rank in terms of top centers in the NHL for you right now?
I personally don't think he has anything to prove to me. Like if it were me and I'm not running the team, but if I were, I would have pressed real hard to make sure I got to a number this year that he was comfortable with, that got him signed so that we can avoid the conversation. And it's not for a drama reason or anything like that. It's just that I think this deal can only end up costing you more if you're the Canucks and not probably less.
How much of it do you think is, and we talked about Pettersson kind of just betting on himself, like, does he get into that conversation of being one of the highest paid players in the league if he is basically just kind of not even necessarily like blows up from what he did last year, but I'm talking like 105 points, 115 points. He's getting Selke votes again. Like, this guy could be one of the highest paid players in the NHL, and that's kind of what it sounds like he's betting on himself with.
Yeah, I see him, sort of springboarding himself into that $11.5 million a year range, which is, I don't know how many players would be ahead of him.
Right.
8, 6.
One guy I wanted to ask about, and it's going to be an interesting scenario to play out for the Vancouver Canucks, because Tyler Myers, a lot of people are thinking, well, as soon as the bonus is coming out, he's gone. He's going to the Coyotes, whatever pick they have to attach to him. It's a cap dump at that point. How different is a Tyler Myers trade from preseason to at the deadline? Like, what are we talking about value-wise in a shift from having to attach to give up on that contract to a team maybe thinking, hey, 6'8" right shot defenseman at the trade deadline, there's some value there. Like, how different are we talking from preseason to really the trade deadline with Tyler Myers and a trade potential there?
Yeah, I don't think the Canucks were ever really intent on even exploring the idea of trading Myers and attaching assets to him. Their mission and mandate has been to compete. They want to be a playoff team. They feel like Tyler Myers filling out their back end at somewhere slotted into that 1 to 6 makes them a better team than asking someone else to play over their heads again. And what is the value? Well, just tell me what kind of season the Canucks have. I mean, where are they in the standings? Are they, if they're a playoff team, they're probably just keeping him and he walks at the end of the year. Or if they're close, if they're in the mix, he's going to be here. I think. I don't know. I don't know why there just has been this since the day he got here. Almost, it's been like, when are we trading Tyler Myers? And it's got to be wearing on him at a certain point. But I don't think he wants to go anywhere. I think he's been pretty clear about that, and I think they could use him.
I agree with you, and that's kind of the take that I've been having all offseason. Faber and I have discussed it before. Before we wrap up with you here, Frank, what did you think of the Tanner Pearson situation? How it kind of all unfolded? Obviously, Canucks get Casey DeSmith, give up a third-round pick, and Tanner Pearson to the Montreal Canadiens. What did you make of all that?
I thought it kind of worked out perfectly for the Canucks. They fill a void that they wanted to. I don't think Spencer Martin was really in their plans to be the backup this year. There's obviously lots of familiarity with DeSmith. And you saw with Demko last year how when he was hurt, you really need to rely on that next guy. So they wanted someone that they had a lot of trust in. And so that's one. And then the Pearson side of it, like, it was abundantly clear that the way this all went down was really awkward. And I think getting to a spot where you didn't have to talk about it and didn't have to waive him at the end of camp, which really seemed like it was a likely possibility, that you not only cleaned up your cap situation and got a guy in net that you feel like you trust, but you also moved on from the sort of, I don't want to call it a sideshow because it wasn't that bad, but that kind of headache, you've taken that out of the mix now, that I think you can just kind of focus on everything else. But it was really interesting to hear the Canucks say that they still would like to move a contract or two to get to a better place.
It is interesting, and DeSmith coming with the 1.8 cap hit, something that is going to be kind of a boost to the goaltending. You mentioned Spencer Martin. I don't think there was a ton of confidence there. Archer Seelovs, what he did in the summer was incredible at the Worlds, but still a young kid who's only had one full season in the AHL. So
and then they want him to play too.
Yes, exactly. And then this new Tolopilo kid they're really liking as well. Final one before we get you out of here, Frank. Quinn Hughes named the captain last week. What do you think about the decision there with Pettersson, no contract? But I think,
I don't think Pettersson was the guy.
No, I think dealing with them every day here down in the media, you could tell Quinn Hughes made the most sense from a Vancouver perspective. From a league-wide, that was the same look, I guess, with Hughes there?
Yeah, and I think, look, there seemed to be some sort of indication of like, oh, well, I heard people talking about this because they didn't go with Pettersson because he doesn't have a contract. I don't think that's the case. I don't think he was ever really the right guy. And not to say that he can't be a leader. Of course he can. He just, I don't know him, and I'm not, pretending that I do, but the sense that I get from talking to people around the league that do know him is he's definitely more of a laid back, out of the spotlight type of guy. And that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. In this case, Quinn Hughes doesn't mind it. He handles it well. And more than that, he's a star player in this league, a top 10 defenseman that I think the best part about it from a Canucks perspective is you've seen this maturation in Quinn Hughes on the ice. You've started to see it off the ice. He can really grow into this role. Is he, fully prepared to walk into the door tomorrow and be an NHL captain and handle everything perfectly? No, I think the answer is no. But with the right people around him, the right support group, Rick Tocchet showing him the way, I think he can get there. And I think it's an excellent, sort of opportunity for him and for the team to really kind of grow around him at the same time as they all kind of grow up together.
And something that we touched on a little bit, I'm going to sneak one more question in here because I do want to get your opinion on this because you talk to a lot of players, you talk to a lot of coaches, agents, everybody. You're talking to everyone, Frank. The Canucks coaching staff of Rick Tocchet, Mike Yeo, Adam Foote, Sergei Gonchar, Daniel and Henrik Sedin being involved. I'm curious, like, what do you ever talk to players about like a perspective from their view when they have a coaching staff that's full of like, I mean, we're talking stars here throughout this coaching staff. It feels like it's, I know Rick Tocchet's joked about it of like they could take any other coaching staff in a game. Like if they were to, put on the skates and suit up, they could take any other coaching staff. Does that mean much? Like, is there much of a difference from just like a standard coach to a player that really had like these guys all had solid NHL careers?
I'd say for me, it's more personality based. And when you look at Rick Tocchet and all of his experience, the diversity of his game as a player, then his track record behind an NHL bench and sort of being the Phil Kessel whisperer. These guys, you look at Sergei Gonchar and the work that he had done with the Penguins defensemen, especially their young guys, and Adam Foote has kids that play in the NHL. Like there's not just the resume as star players or impactful players. That's important. To me, it's more personality driven and relatability. Mike Yeo has a ton of that. So all of these guys have a vast level of experience and knowledge from around the league, but it's also the diversity of their background and opinion that I think really helps set them apart, that puts them, I think, in an enviable position that Rick Tocchet has gotten people that he really knows and trusts. And it's not just the coaching staff. Like they also, if I'm not mistaken, made some changes to their medical staff and things like that they want to try and improve things. And they didn't stop at, hey, we're just making a coaching change.
Yeah, well, we're excited to see, especially the Canucks defensemen have Sergei Gonchar, Adam Foote. It feels like you got the offensive guy, the defensive guy. Like it feels like a very good staff heading into the season. Frank, we're excited to head into the season with you every Wednesday here. 1:15, I believe, is when you'll be joining us every Wednesday here on the Canucks Conversation. And hey, by the way, I don't think we touched on it yet. We're back to 5 shows a week starting today, 5 shows a week with the Nation Network. Of course, we're very excited. And Frank, every Wednesday, I'll let you out. Quads, why don't you take us with our quick Betway? You can skip to the end here. You're not the Betway guy normally. I know I normally carry the Betway segments, but we'll let you get this. I'm going to run Frank out, and I'll be back in 1 minute here. But Frank, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be with you guys. Great to be in Van. And Quad, sorry to miss you in person, but it was real special being here in Faberville.
It's okay. I'm glad you got to sit in my chair, Frank. Couldn't have done it better. So great job.
It's
Thanks
gonna be
for
warm
thanks
by the
for
time you
joining
get
us.
back tomorrow.
All right, cut my video, Aaron. I don't want people to see that I'm wearing shorts.
He got his video and his audio. Aaron, I'm gonna bring you in as well, because I don't like talking alone. But let's get to the Betway bet of the day because it is on the topic of the Pacific Division. And Aaron, obviously, I know you're an Oilers fan based in Edmonton, and I think it kind of goes without saying that they're going to be in that conversation for first in the Pacific Division, as Frank said, and kind of what I alluded to earlier when I was talking about Rutherford's quotes. It feels like the Canucks, Kraken, and Flames are all in that position where if everything goes right, we're a playoff team. Now, I know the Oilers are in a different conversation, but like, what do you make of the rest of the Pacific Division?
There we
Got
go.
you muted there. There you go.
There we go. I hate to say that I do agree. I do think that some of these other teams, and now I might be becoming biased because I'm talking about the Canucks all day, every day. But I do think that you guys have something there. It starts goaltending. You have stud centerman. You've got some good wingers. I like Andrei Kuzmenko. I do think that the Canucks could get in as a wild card team. Now, anything higher than that, I wouldn't hold your breath. I think it goes Oilers, Vegas, Kings, Canucks. What about you?
All right. No, I agree with you. I agree with you. And I'll pull up the Betway bet if you can. But the thing that I kind of wonder about is how far, because I think the gap between the Oilers and Golden Knights is razor thin. Then I think the gap between those two teams and the LA Kings, who we're both kind of penciling in that third spot, I think the gap is pretty sizable, and I would argue that the gap between the Kings and those other teams that I mentioned, the Flames, Kraken, Canucks, I think that gap is a lot closer than a lot of people are kind of giving them credit for. So we have the odds right here. The outright winner of the Pacific Division, plus 200 odds, is the Edmonton Oilers, plus 225 for the Vegas Golden Knights. So like I said, razor thin, plus 400 for the LA Kings, plus 700 for the Calgary Flames, plus 900 for the Seattle Kraken, and plus 1,400 for the Vancouver Canucks, who have the worst odds of any team not named San Jose or Anaheim to win the Pacific Division. That is courtesy of our friends over at Betway. Go check them out. Betway, Betway, Betway. If you choose to play, please play responsibly. Doing the Betway segment a little earlier here. The MLB playoffs are starting. We got a lot of stuff going on. But does that surprise you at all to see the Canucks so low? Because it surprises me a little bit. I just gave the take that I think the Kings are closer to the Flames, Kraken, Canucks, and than people are giving them credit for. And I also think the Canucks, Kraken, and Flames are a lot closer than these odds would suggest. And Faber, you're back now. So that was kind of the conversation Aaron and I had while you were gone, was that I thought the LA Kings maybe weren't as close to the Vegas Golden Knights and Oilers as everybody else seems to think. I don't know if they're a lock for that third spot. I really don't, but that's where Betway has them. What do you think?
I think it surprises people that like LA was a playoff team last year, right? Like a lot of people just seem to think they were like the young team on the up and up. And when are they going to do it? They've been doing it a little bit, right? They've added some players that are a little bit older now and can bring a lot to the team. And I still feel like the Kings are like, it felt like they're a strong team, but it feels like everything hasn't clicked yet, right? It has that whole prospect pool that we talked about for years being the best in hockey for a long time. It feels like everything hasn't really taken the next step. So yeah, I think I'm not too surprised to see the Kings at plus 400, but a little bit of value there on the Canucks, eh? Ride with the Canucks, baby. $10 bet. That's going to return you 150 over on Betway. The good folks over there at Betway, plus 1,400 odds for the Canucks to win the Pacific. I don't know if I'm throwing it down on there, but you're feeling pretty good about the Oilers, I think, at plus 200, and you get a little bit of value on it as well. So yeah, that's we had to sneak in the Betway there, so I get Frank out. So let's talk about a 10-0 preseason game, Quads, because I know that's going to be a lot of fun. I just want to say this off the top about the preseason game. It's not a huge story, even though the score was 10-0, because of the disparity in the lineups and the rosters that we saw there. But to me, like, it's still a story to lose 10-0. Okay, like this, I get that the rosters were very different, but these are pro players. These are guys. There were some NHLers obviously in the lineup for the Vancouver Canucks. 10-0 really is a tough one to watch. And it just felt like a moment of like, and listen, if everything goes bad this Canucks season, people are going to bring this up. Be like, yeah, but it was the game 1 of the preseason. Why'd they send all these AHLers? It's not a massive story to me, but just the fact that it was 10 was like, man, that sucked. Like, that really sucked last night to get all excited to watch, turn on Sportsnet, watch the first game of the year, that music off the top to watch, the Canucks broadcast starting and all that stuff. And then to see them just get their absolute asses kicked. It was tough. And I'm not saying it's a massive story. I'm just saying, like, it is a story to lose 10-0. I don't care what anyone says. Like, I'm not just going to brush this completely to the side.
The rest of the league is laughing, and that's what the Canucks and Canucks fans want there to be less of this year, is other teams and other fan bases laughing at everything the Canucks are doing. Yes, this wasn't a great start to the preseason, but let's see how Wednesday night goes. All I'm going to say is you can't just keep putting out bad lineups and say, well, it's the lineup's fault. It's the lineup's fault. The thing is, Chris, is that to lose 10-0, and that's the thing, is I want to put this into proportion a little bit here, is that, into perspective, I should say, is that the Flames didn't dress their entire NHL lineup. And that's what I think a lot of it was made out to be, was this is the Flames opening night roster. It's not. They they dressed like 3 or 4 of their regular defensemen, and their top line was in the game. But some of those guys, like Matt Coronado, was in the AHL, right? Like, a lot of those guys on that team weren't these world beaters that, I think the thing that it comes down to for me, Chris, is I'm not going to rag on any one individual's performance. I'd rather look at the positives from that night. We said there was a lot to like about Aatu Räty. We'll get into that, I'm sure. We're leading founders of the Matt Irwin fan club. We'll get into that as well. But the one thing that I want to point out is, like, making excuses for players like Noah Juulsen, Dakota Joshua, Sheldon Dries, these guys, and Pius Suter looked good. Let's get that right. Pius Suter looked pretty good, I thought. But, like, these guys like Noah Juulsen, Ikito Hirose, who, by the way, was only on for 1 goal. I'm not trying to pick on any individuals. I'm just saying that you can't excuse an entire performance like that by saying, well, look at the lineup. Because, hey, those same people that are saying that are also penciling in guys like Juulsen, Joshua, all those guys are going to be playing against that NHL competition this year. Like, when you play in the NHL, you're going to face that tough competition. And that's what's going to happen, is you're going to face guys like Jonathan Huberdeau, right? Like, that's going to happen. But the fact that it was some of the bottom 6 players on the Flames lineup last night scoring, you wanted a bit more of pushback. And I understand the Canucks didn't have anywhere near what they're going to have on opening night, but they did have some of them. And some of those guys I thought looked very, very bad. And I'm not going to get into individual performances, but I'm just saying, like, you can't just excuse it and say, oh, it's preseason and the Flames had a better lineup. Sorry, you had guys who you want to be in the NHL this year play that poorly in front of whoever was in net. It was Sawchenko and then Seelovs, or Seelovs then Sawchenko. So I don't know. It's not a huge story, but it's not one that you can just brush away and say, whatever. It's 10-0.
Yeah, good quote there. Nice pull there. And right before his press conference, mentioned to Murph, this is Rick Toggett saying, I feel like Sean Payton, because we did see a 70-20 loss at the hands of the Miami Dolphins yesterday as well. So listen, it's just a tough look. Like, I think it's very demoralizing for the players when they're out there on the ice and the crowd is chanting, we want 10. That is a horrible feeling. And the fact that they didn't score at least 1 goal is very tough. At least Jarhead here in the chat said, at least they put up a goal in his game. They lost 10-1 in their beer league opener and set the tone. That's the thing. You're missing all of your stars. And I think it's going to look a lot different moving forward here. And I bet Rick Tocchet, if he was thinking of sending another young roster for their game on Wednesday, I'm going to guess he's going to add a couple more veterans into the lineup so they don't get embarrassed like this. But in the end, let's talk about a couple things that we did like, as well as one scenario I want to ask you a little bit about. Matt Irwin, we mentioned it. We're the founders of the Matt Irwin fan club. I was there when I was 9 years old watching him play, or 12 years old watching him play for the Nanaimo Clippers. Loved that he stuck up for Niels Höglander. That was great to see. Drops the gloves, ends up, I thought he played a pretty solid game for what you're going to expect from him. And that's a tough ask, right? Because the team's getting absolutely caved in. Even though the shots were tied. Did you see that? Like 26-26 were the shots in the game, which was just wild to me. So your boy Shilov's over there. You might want to check on your boy there, Quads. But Matt Irwin, I liked him throughout the game. I think the best player for the Canucks, and everybody felt like they were in agreement here on this, like Aatu Ratu had some pretty good puck skills throughout the game, I thought.
Yeah, and that board battle, it was the board battle heard around the world, it felt like, right? Like when he, he was cross-checked from behind, and keep in mind, he was up against Noah Hannafin. Like that's what I mean, is that's an NHL caliber defenseman, so that looks really good for Aatu Ratu. On the other side, and I don't mean to go to the negatives immediately, but I'm just saying that these guys that you're saying, yes, they can play in the NHL, flubbing the puck, making incorrect plays in their own end against AHL players, not NHL players, that doesn't look good on them. Alternatively, Aatu Ratu going against NHL players looked great. That was a really, really positive night for Aatu Ratu, I'd say. And that's the thing, Chris, is when we look at preseason games like this, we're trying to find the things to take away. And that was a major one for me was, like last year, we watched Ratu all through the AHL playoffs. That dude couldn't skate. Like that's what it came down to. He really, really couldn't skate the way he was last night. And I think it was Dollywall that reported that he got a skating coach this offseason. And hey, he looks like a totally different player just by adding that kind of extra step to his game. He's like the agility that he showed on that board battle, where not only did he win the puck back and not give up on a play, which is great, he's got heart, but then to get up and kind of stick handle through a phone booth and find his way back to the slot. I think that was the thing I was most impressed about, because he showed some edge work that we just hadn't seen before. I was very impressed by Aatu Ratu last night, in particular his skating.
And Aaron, can we get the lineup up here? The one that I threw into the work tape of just the way that they actually position the lineup for the Vancouver Canucks. I wanted to ask about the defensemen, because let's go through the names here. Akito Hirose, Noah Juleson, Matt Irwin, Cole McWard, Jack Rathbone, Jet Wu. Quads, what do all of 6 of these defensemen have in common? They are vying for a role in the third pairing or the 7th, 8th defenseman for the Vancouver Canucks on opening night. The 2 guys that you could throw into this group as well, Christian Wolanin and Guillaume Brisebois, I feel like those are like the 8 guys fighting for those 3 spots. And I'm talking about the left shot guy on the third pairing, as well as the 7-8 defenseman that you're going to carry when you head on the road or at home or whatever you are, just the extra 2 defensemen. Did anyone here make a case for themselves in a positive way, or was it kind of all negatives? Like, man, I thought Noah Juleson had a very rough game. That one turnover right in front of Artur Shilov's was a tough one. I thought Rathbone had a couple times where offensively he looked all right, but, on his half of the ice, it didn't look great for him. And I thought Jet Wu had a tough night from basically the opening minute when he tipped in that puck off of his skate into his own net and then takes an interference penalty right after that. It felt like there was a lot of negatives for the guys in this game. And listen, this is a huge uphill battle for them to go through. But out of all of them, I think the guys who made the best case for themselves winning a job were Christian Wolanin and Guillaume Brisebois, and they weren't in the lineup. They didn't have to face that tough roster. So I'm curious to see. And do you get any read off of Wolanin and Brisebois not being used here? Because to me, they feel like the front runners for kind of that third pairing role, as well as the 7-8 spots.
I think it might suggest they have the inside track a little bit, right? Like, I think so. I think this game taught you a lot. I think the only guys who really are staying in this conversation are Hirose and Irwin, I'd say, are the only guys that are still in that conversation based on their performance last night. And then maybe Noah Juleson as well, but that's more so based on the Canucks' lack of guys who can play with Quinn Hughes. And look, we saw Noah Juleson there on the first day of camp. I wrote this last night. I really don't think Noah Juleson's a viable option over an 82-game stretch. Like, that's the thing, is having a guy who can come up and play 5 or 10 games while your regular guy is hurt is fine. Like, that's good depth. But you don't want to build your team around, yes, okay, Noah Juleson could play first pairing minutes in the NHL for a full season. Because I don't think he can, flat out. I don't think that's the thing that we're going to see this year. Like, that goal you talked about where he gave up the puck, like, that was with an AHLer pressuring him. Like, that was not because, the Flames top line and everybody was out. That was with an AHL line pressuring him. And I don't want to pick on individual guys, because I feel like we're making a mountain out of a molehill here. Like, none of this really matters. I'm just saying, in terms of individual performances, I think Akito Hirose and Matt Irwin are really the only guys that should be in the running for that 7-8 job.
Right. I think we can move on, right? Like, we're not going to spend too much more time on this. There was a comment I did want to get to. Spark said, if you think anyone outside Suter, Irwin, and Joshua are NHL ready, I don't know what to say. That's interesting, because I think one guy that we do want to bring up was Vasily Podkolzin. It also wasn't a great game for him, even though I know you don't want to dive into individual games. I thought that when you're watching Podkolzin and you're watching Niels Höglander, like, I think Höglander made more of an impact. It was nice to see him. I thought it was a little bit of a dirty hit but kind of going in there on Gilbert there when he injured him, but he was kind of getting him back for the big hit that he threw on him earlier in the game, and it wasn't penalized in the end, even though I guess it could have, because they were heading into the board and could have been an interference call or whatever it may be. I thought Höglander at least had the thing that Rick Tocchet wants from a player, specifically a guy who's probably gonna, might have to vie for a job in the bottom six, or even like the way we've seen Höglander skating on the top line. I don't know. I think Tocchet took some positives away from Höglander's play compared to probably what you saw from Vasily Podkolzin, where it just looked like, kind of just like a step out of place for Vasily Podkolzin throughout the game. And I didn't think the effort level was even close to what we saw from Höglander in it.
Was he gripping the stick too tight, Chris? Because that's what we talked about a lot last year, was gripping the stick too tight. And honestly, I think he's just like, does it not look like Vasily Podkolzin's just thinking too hard? Like he's trying so hard not to make a mistake, and like he's got to let it hang. That's what Tocchet said. But I also wonder if all this pressure is just kind of too much for Vasily Podkolzin, where you're just seeing a guy who looks confused, right? Like he didn't look, like you said, he didn't look like an NHLer out there, or that was a commenter that said that, but he didn't really look like an NHL player. And I think for a guy who was taken 10th overall, you want to see that. It's still a long preseason. Well, it's not, but there's 6 games total, and that was one of them. We're going to see more from Vasily Podkolzin, and I really hope he gets his confidence back and he kind of is able to step into a spot where he's a little more comfortable, because he just looked uncomfortable last night, I think is the best way to put it. I said confused. I think he just looked uncomfortable.
Yeah, and remember when we spoke to him in Victoria, and something that he brought up was like just not being so down on himself. And it's just like, yeah, he's just got to go out and play, right? Like we know that there's enough skill there. He's not going to be a guy who's going to score 70 to 100 points for you, but there is enough skill there where he can be dangerous in the offensive zone. But I think the thing you want with Podkolzin is for him to just be such a strong player in your neutral and defensive zone, because you know that he has those traits in his game. Like, man, we remember watching him at the World Juniors for Russia, or watching him in the KHL in that playoff run. Like, there were a lot of things to really like from Vasily Podkolzin. It just seems like he's got to be able to just like, he almost needs a moment this preseason where the light just flips and he's got that confidence back. And I think that's a difficult thing to ask, right? It's not something that you can just go into a game and like, well, you know what? Today I've got my confidence. Like, today I'm doing it. Today's the day I change everything. You can have that mentality going into it, and Podkolzin should, but it's not necessarily going to happen for sure. It's something that's a little bit difficult to kind of just force upon yourself. It's almost like you need to earn it a little bit. So yeah, he's got to do something a little bit different with this game to be able to develop that confidence back. And man, that's the thing. Like, man, you watch him in the World Juniors, and it's like the confidence that he had was unreal. Watch him in the KHL playoffs right before he came over here. The confidence that he had in himself was, it was, glowing off of him. Like, it's something that we know can be there. I think that's the most frustrating part, is he just hasn't been able to figure it out at the NHL level. And I think back to like his first NHL goal, just seeing felt like there was such a weight lifted off him when he scored that goal. He's screaming when he scores it. And it's like, that's the Podkolzin you want to see. But after everything that went on last year, and honestly, in the couple of years he's been in the NHL, it's going to be difficult to get that back. It is going to be difficult. I just think it's going to take I know people don't like when I talk about like fighting and stuff, but like, is it going to take like Podsy just letting her hang and fighting someone, or throwing this huge hit, or scoring this wicked goal? Like, I think it's going to take a moment. It's not going to be able to be something you can just draw up within yourself. It's going to take a moment, I think, for Podkolzin to get his confidence back.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I personally, I disagree, actually. I don't think it's going to be one thing. I like what Karan said in the chat here, who you met in Victoria.
No, it actually is a different Karan.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, because this Karan, yeah, okay, yeah, okay. He said coaches have not let Pods do what he does best. Forcing him to work on his mistakes makes a young guy lose all confidence and play anxious. It feels like Talk is trying to change that, he adds. So, interesting take, I'd say. I don't think there's one silver bullet or correct answer for what's going to fix Vasily Podkolzin. I just think that right now, I'm not ready to give up on him. But to say you're not worried about a guy who was drafted in the top 10 again coming into a season, and like, the expectations are high for Podkolzin, right? Like, I don't think anybody wants to see him back on waivers or not on waivers, excuse me, back in Abbotsford for a full season. Like, we want to see this guy in the NHL, right? And he was given that chance with JT Miller. I'd like to see him stick there. Like I would really like it if he could figure it out and be there. But hey, I'm also not calling for the guy to get handed NHL ice time, right? Like you have to earn it, right? That's not what I'm calling for. I just hope he goes out and earns it. We're big Vasily Podkolzin fans in this podcast.
Yeah, I felt like the roster had a lot of guys on it that, we talked about the defense core being bubble guys. It feels like Podkolzin was given a chance, and especially at the start of training camp, and then in that game couldn't really follow it up. But like you said, we're not going to really talk about this game anymore. It was just a tough one to really make some evaluations here. Even though I know you love a good goaltender with a 600 save percentage like Shilov's had last night. So you're banking on it basically AHL goaltender of the year season from Shilov's after his performance yesterday, which listen, I'm working on the name here. Shilov's. You see, I've done it every time. You haven't said it. You're going back to the old Seelov's name.
No, I'm not. I have not once accidentally said it incorrectly. It's Shilov's. We knew that. Shout out
Aaron,
Yerky, who told us years ago.
Aaron, go back in the tape. 20 minutes ago, he said Seelov's.
I did not. I did not.
Wrap it up here with some tidbits from training camp. Quads, how was your overall experience on the island?
Great. It was a good time. It was a good time. Got some good restaurants. Had a good time. There was 2 nights in a row actually. So the first night, my girlfriend and I went for dinner with the Sportsnet crew with Murph, Shorty, right? And all of the Canucks were there too. So we all went, and we went to Canucks Club, I'll tell you. And it was very funny because then the Canucks team staff showed up, and basically everybody was at Cactus Club. And it was very funny that none of us branched out and tried a place that we didn't have at home. Everybody just defaulted to Cactus Club for the first night. So that was a lot of fun. And then the next night I went to this place. Have you heard of it? Bard and the Banker. It was awesome. Bard and Banker. It's called. It was really cool. It was a really, really interesting place. It was in an old bank, so you could look around and anyways, I found it really cool. What was I supposed to be talking about? Oh yeah, tidbits from training camp. Okay. The backup job seems to be Casey DeSmith's. I'll start there. We'll start in the crease. I'm curious how much he changes his game, because I wonder if it's another Yaro Halak situation where he comes to Vancouver and he's trying to change his game, trying to do the Ian Clark style, and it's just not working for him. So, and hey, like Braden Holtby, same sort of thing, right? Where maybe you can't teach an old dog a ton of new tricks. So I'm curious how the situation kind of plays itself out this year. I do think DeSmith kind of has that NHL backup job. I'm curious. I still think they're going to trade a guy like Spencer Martin. I don't think they want to have Spencer Martin in the system at this point. And hey, we like Spencer Martin, so we don't want that to happen. But just with how Tolopilo was used, he gets the scrimmage with Shilov's. And then you see DeSmith and Demko as well. Like I think this organization would really, really like to have a tandem of Tolopilo and Shilov splitting starts in the AHL this year.
And from what I heard, that might be the most fun goaltending duo in the league. And I'm talking NHL and AHL, because Tolopilo, apparently he's not super confident in his English, but behind the scenes, from what I've heard, he is a very funny guy. So him and Seelovs, we've already dealt with Artie Party enough ourselves, and we love the personality there. So I'll love it if that's the goaltending duo out there in Abbotsford when I'm making my trips out there. Yeah, you know what I did want to bring up? You never went out you didn't go out to dinner or anything with me the whole time in Victoria, Quads. You were away from me the whole time. You're off in your own world, follow around the Canucks, probably snapping a bunch of photos as you normally do. You didn't go out with me once the whole time. I just wanted to get that out for everybody listening to the show. You didn't want to come out. This is
and there's the photo. Thank you, Aaron.
And this is where you left me right after the rink. That's what I'm saying. This is the only time I saw you outside of the rink was when we took a selfie, and then you're like, all right, well, I'll catch you tomorrow morning.
Hope you can find the bus home.
Yeah, pretty much. No, I will say you did drive me back to my friend's place that I was staying at.
To and from every single day.
I got to give a shout out though. Not Karan here in the chat, but a different Karan came up, and I got to tell the story because we're sitting on like one of the patios that are kind of on the street, and it's all the Sportsnet guys are there, the Athletic guys, Rob Williams was there as well, and a couple of other folks. So they're all excited, and they're like, oh, like, Dan Murphy's there, like a huge name in sports. And this listener of the show, Karan, he listens to every show. He says, I've been chatting with him in the DMs now. He's looking around, and then he didn't notice me for a second. When he noticed me, he goes, Famer! And he goes nuts, freaking out. I'm sitting right beside Dan Murphy. And Karan, who's a regular listener of the show, it was incredible. I was so pumped that at it, and all the other media guys were laughing quite a bit. The fact that, like, when you walk by on the street and you see Dan Murphy, that's the guy you, like, go nuts for. It was really funny, but I was like, regular listeners, man, we got the best listeners for Canucks Convo there. And Bert Cam, he is out like a light right now. So good for little Bert there.
Yeah,
And
Bert's
I
having
gotta
the time
say,
of his life.
tried to take the guys out for karaoke after what we did in Penticton. Everybody wanted to go to karaoke, all the Sportsnet guys. And I'm like, okay, I'll find us a spot. So I find this spot, and it's the only karaoke night I could find on I think it was Friday night or maybe Thursday night. And I'm like, hey, I'll meet everyone there. So I get a text from Josh Elliott Wolf, who's a producer and fill-in host as well on Sportsnet 650. He texted me. He was there early. He said, this place looks like a 1970s basement that hasn't been renovated. And I'm like, Josh, you suit wearing, preppy kid. He's got really high standards or whatever. And I'm like, he doesn't get it. Like, he doesn't get what a dive bar is. I walk into this place. It looked like a Chinese food restaurant from like the early 2000s that basically you just took the buffet out. And it was just like the tables were left in that. And I was like, it was the worst karaoke night ever. I had one beer. I had a Lucky because I was on the island. And we got out of there so quick. It was a very unfortunate night. I wanted to give, I was telling everyone, like, I got a spot. The Google reviews, it's like 4.6 stars out of 5. So I'm like, okay, I got a spot. We're all good. We get to this place. And I've never been in a worse bar in my entire life. It was tough. The only thing they had going in there was pull tabs. So that was fine. But here's the other thing. I throw $20 into the pull tabs, $1 win out of the whole pull tabs, $20. So this place was a huge letdown. I'm not even going to say their name on the show here because I don't want to get in trouble for it. But a huge flop on the second week of karaoke because we had such a fun night in Penticton. We wanted to do it again. And we are going to get Frank to karaoke at some point throughout the year here. We'll get him just a little chorus or something. I know he didn't sound like he was very interested in it when he was going to drop any bars.
Well, that's the thing is you were texting me. It would be like 8:30 and you'd be like, hey, are you coming out? I'm like, no, I'm going to bed. Like, I've been going to bed at like 9:30 every night, getting up with the dog at 6. It's so nice. No traffic. You go for a walk. There's no people out. That's my favorite. Sun's rising. I've been an early bird right now this season, like until the season starts, I guess, when I have to stay up late. But I've been getting up very early and it's been great.
You don't get life on the road, Quads. You got to work. Like, this is what it was in Nashville. I worked until about midnight, and then you go out after that. So that's why I'm texting you at 8:30, starting to figure out where to go. You got to get all your work done quick, and then you can go out. And we had some really fun nights. Went out with Drance and J-Pat a couple nights and had some good times. It was really fun down in Victoria. People down there, man, they're just the best. Quads, you drove around. Even the roads were a little confusing. What did we talk about drivers last week on the show? The folks on the island, go ahead. Oh, here's a wave. Yeah, thanks for letting me in. All these smiles on the roads, complete opposite than it's been here in Vancouver. It was good to be on the island and everybody that we ran into in the concourse walking around, seeing people from the crowd. Lauren doing an incredible job. He beat all the reporters to the rink every morning. He was getting all the good scoops. So shout out to Lauren. We ran into him as well. Just awesome, man. I really think they did a good job. And you laughed about it because the Save on Foods Memorial Center, that concourse is wider than the one at Rogers Arena. You're shoulder to shoulder at Rogers Arena trying to get from section to section. You had room and a half down there in the Save on Foods Memorial. Nice little concourse down there.
I didn't really realize until you start going to like MLB ballparks and other NHL rinks and various sports places like junior hockey rinks as well. Yeah. You don't realize how small the concourse at Rogers Arena is because like growing up in recent years, I heard people complaining like, oh, it's so narrow, like there's no room. And obviously when you go to Canucks games, there is no room. If there's a lineup of more than like 5 people, you have to go through the lineup to walk through. But man, at Save on Foods Memorial Center, yeah, I walked in and I was like, holy cow, like this place is wider than Rogers Arena. So that was really interesting to see. Maybe it was just because there was no people in it, but I'll tell you, I went when there was people as well, and it wasn't that busy. Like it was fine.
It's a good spot. The Prince George Cougars are there opening weekend of the WHL season. Your boy Ty Smith heading back to the island. A couple tidbits to get to. Speaking of Ty Smith.
Ty Young.
Well, what am I talking? Ty Smith. He used to be a good defenseman out of the dub. That's who I'm talking about. But Ty Young. First, let me see. This is the card that Frank Seravalli pulled. Nice. On the rich pack here. The $30 packs. Elias Pettersson card out of there. That's nice. Ty Young signs a entry-level contract with the Vancouver Canucks. You get that. I'm all off the place. This whole Ty Smith thing mixed me up here. Quads, walk me through this 3-year deal, entry-level contract. Ty Young.
Yes. So Ty Young to a 3-year ELC. Sawyer Minio yesterday, we should also mention. But The thing that I found really interesting about this, Chris, was in the press release, Patrick Alvin talked about Ty Young's size and the plan in place from the goaltending department. I thought that was really interesting to hear the GM say that, because usually, and I put this in the article that I wrote about it,
Right.
usually the quotes in a press release from the GM are like, "We're very happy with this player's development." That's it. And then they just say like, "Yeah, we're happy with his progress. We're excited to see it continue." But like, citing the plan in place, I thought that was really, really cool, because I do know, and I've talked about this before, that each prospect in the Canucks goaltending kind of pipeline knows what they need to work on that season and kind of knows what they're going to do this season. They all have different goals and they're all going to go out and try to do them. Last year was very, very good for Ty Young in terms of development. And I had the Prince George broadcaster, a few Prince George residents really mad that I called the team awful because they finished okay in the standings and won a playoff round. So I deleted the tweet, and then I had a few people, I'm not going to name names, a few people reached out, they're like, "No, they were horrible defensively," which is what I was saying. They were an awful, awful team defensively. They squeaked into the WHL playoffs and won a round or whatever. They came fourth. Don't try and send me their place in the standings, okay? I don't watch every WHL game. I was told they're very, very bad defensively. I've watched like 2 games last year, and they were bad defensively in those games. That was the point I was trying to make. And for Ty Young, it was a really, really solid season development-wise, because you pointed out at camp, you said, "Oh, wow, Ty Young's movement looks really good." I nearly fell out of my chair hearing that, because a year ago in 2022, you did. You said his movement is good. Like, I'm not trying to make fun of you. I'm saying, like, I nearly fell out of my chair hearing that, because if you had told me that his movement would look good at training camp 2023, in 2022, when I first saw him play, I would have thought you were nuts. Like, the improvement the kid's made in a year is very, very good to see. And I'm excited to see it kind of take another step this year and see kind of what the fruits of the Canucks labor is with the plan that he's got in place for himself here. So I'm really curious how the season goes for him. I hope Prince George is better defensively. I hope the Prince George residents don't freak out at me for saying the Panthers aren't good defensively. Yeah, I pissed off a lot of people with that tweet.
As well, I know Lisa brought it up. I think you touched on it quickly. Sawyer Minio signed his 3-year entry-level contract yesterday as well. He's heading back to Seattle. And a lot more ice time coming his way, right? Like, I think they had 3 defensemen, and Lisa, you can correct me if I'm wrong, 3 defensemen graduate to pro hockey last year. So you're talking about Minio, who was kind of a 5'6" guy, you know, maybe snuck into the top 4 at times. He's now expected to be a top 4 guy, if not a top pairing guy. So the Canucks like Minio, obviously. They liked what they saw at Young Stars. They liked what they saw at training camp. They gave him that ELC. Burns up a contract spot for the Vancouver Canucks moving forward, but they do that because they like the kid. And you'll see the 3 years of that entry-level contract slide, because Minio's heading back for another season in the WHL. And I'm just trying to find it here. When we are going down, you and I were going down Prince George, looks like January 5th, I believe. We're going down. Prince George facing off against Seattle. So that'll be a fun one. First game back for the new year for Seattle as well. So that'll be cool. January 5th, we're heading down to watch Ty Young and Sawyer Minio battle it up. We're going to have the exclusives for Canucks Army. I got Minio. You got Young. We're road tripping, quads.
Sounds good. Did you see The Office is getting a reboot? I hate to pull it away from hockey, but I love to pull it away from hockey. The Office is getting a reboot.
Really?
Yeah. The Office US.
Is Steve Carell going back or
no? No. It's not like
no.
it sounds like there's going to be a new cast. So I don't know, man.
You know what I saw? I was looking at the main screen on my whatever. I got the Roku TV or whatever the TV brand is. It's got all the apps on it and stuff. I'm loading it up the other day, and the first thing that pops up is Zoe 102, a remake of the show that might be too. Are you too young for Zoe 101, quads?
No. Zoe 101 was huge for me.
You have a big crush on Zoe back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a movie though. 102 is a movie, and I haven't watched it, but Zoe 102 is the movie, and I might watch it.
I asked my fiance, she watched it, and she couldn't finish it, so it was that bad. It was that bad, and it's too bad because I watched How I Met Your Father with Hilary Duff as the main character of it. I watched a few episodes of that, and I thought it was decent. I didn't think it was great, but I thought it was decent. And here's the other thing: I'm watching football last night, and then it flips to one of these CTV Canadian shows, and I mentioned him actually earlier in the show. But John Liu is like the boss on this Canadian television show. of this rant. I don't know what the show is even called. It just came on after football yesterday. And then he just like brought up like a video of like, oh, it's like my boss, John Liu. And like they used his name in the show as John Liu, and he was just in the show. And I said, that's a reporter on Montreal. So famous for the suits with shorts, which I am going to adopt very soon, but I got weird looking legs, so I think it's going to be a tough look for me. I won't be looking like LeBron James walking around in that thing, but I'm going to do it just for the temperature release that I'll get from the shorts.
Jeez. So your outfits were a heavy topic of conversation at training camp. So now you're going with the suit shorts.
Well, I'm just lost. You saw me. Day one, I'm the only guy in a freaking suit. I'm overdressed. And then second day, I'm in the joggers, and everybody, for some reason, decided to dress up more on day. Is everyone behind my back in a group chat here of Canucks media of just like, let's make Faber look like an idiot and either dress down or dress up on days? Or am I just, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing with them.
I promise you there's no secret collective that's trying to make you look bad.
I'm not in line with anybody here. It was a tough one. Final thing, quick little tidbit today. As we kind of expected, all the junior players who were in attendance for the Vancouver Canucks training camp, we're talking Kirill Kudryavtsev, Sawyer Minio, Hunter Brustevich, Ty Young, and Vilmer Ulrichsen. They were all sent back to their junior teams earlier this morning. I talked to some people down in the Sioux today about Kirill Kudryavtsev. They're confident he's their number one guy. He's going to be number one on their power play. He's going to be number one in their penalty kill. And a lot of very high expectations for the Greyhounds this year compared to what they did last year. What I heard is they had a really bad year last year. They drafted high. They also made a trade to go kind of all in the OHL. So this is a all-in year for Sioux heading into it this year. And Kudryavtsev is going to be the horse on the back end. What do you got there? Aaron's got a photo of LeBron in the suit shorts here. See, that's what I'm going to try and pull off, but I don't think it's going to look the same, really.
I think you might be right.
I got more of a barrel body than LeBron James, and not as much length. I think it's going to be something that I don't want to just buy a suits with the short. Now, you know what? Now that I see this, LeBron doesn't even look that good in it. Like, and I'm just going to look worse. So maybe I should throw out the whole John. Can you get one of John Liu, Aaron? John Liu looks great in the suits with the shorts. I think he looks great. Yeah, Karan said Ron looks bad in that photo there.
Okay, while we wait, I don't know if this is what Hell of a Shot's asking in the chat, but it was a good reminder for me. Live show. Not live show, but a live event we are going to be having with Canucks Army at Greta. Greta is our partner this season for all of our live events. And the first one, we're going to have more information coming soon where you can buy tickets, all that sort of stuff, and what we're going to do. The first live event that we're going to have is going to be at Greta. So everybody knows where Greta is. For the first road game of the season. I won't be there. I will be in Edmonton covering the game, but you will be there, and we're gonna have a big watch party at Greta. So it's gonna be a lot of fun to watch the Canucks take on the Oilers in Game 2 of the season. We did one, I think, 2 years back now that we did a live event, and then last year we just kind of, with everything that went on last year, it kind of slipped our minds. We didn't really have one put in place, but this year we're going to have a live event, and it is going to be a lot of fun. Like I said, it's at Greta, and it is going to be for the first away game of the season when the Canucks take on the Oilers on October. What day is that? What day is it?
13th, I think.
14th. Saturday, October 14th.
Yeah, so we're going to be at Greta, West Cordova Street down there, right in Gastown. And apparently we've got a lot of people showing up already, too. The folks that I was out there with at the Run Club, they're showing up, too. And they're excited for it. So yeah, it's going to be nice. I've heard about the duck bow buns. You got to get that. You got to try the duck bow buds. You know about that. But they got arcades and stuff in there too. And that's the thing. Last time I went to one of these arcades, I was doing the quarterback thing. I was doing the quarterback drill. I couldn't lift my arm the next day. I had this. Never mind. I'm not going to say what I was about to say there. That would have been bad. But yeah, they got good food there, good drinks. I'll be there as kind of the MC and host of the night for the first game on the road. As they face off against the Edmonton Oilers. I hope to see a lot of people out there. I'm very happy that we have just like not only just like a spot to do these kind of events, like a bar to get everyone together, watch a game and enjoy it, but like an actual like cool one, right? Quads, let's be honest here. We heard about some other spots that they might be doing these events for this coming season. I went and checked one out. I am very happy we're not at that one. I'm very happy we're at Greta. Greta is much better than the other spot. And if our sales guy Jared's listening to this, Jared, that spot you sent me, I tell you, I'm very happy we're not there. I'm very happy we're at Greta. I was sitting in the corner there. I had a fly nonstop. The flies were flying into my beard at this dirty old bar that you sent me to. Greta's a good one. I'm excited for Greta. I won't say the other one.
Oh my gosh. Okay, yes.
Holy,
So
I was
Greta,
I'm glad I
very
don't have to
excited.
lie about like really liking this. Like Greta, I like. I'm very happy that we're going to Greta. The other place, oh man, I'm not talking about it.
Okay.
here's the
Do we have the photo of John
Like,
Liu?
all I can see is the powerful calves in the suit shorts. One of the best parts of my bodies is my calves. Just like John Liu. There he is on the YouTube here. He's looking great.
John Liu. He's got some good facial hair now too, right? This is an older photo.
Yeah, and John's a little bit of a shorter guy too. So maybe you could be a short suit guy.
No, I'm good.
It looks better on John Liu than it does on LeBron, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think pants would look good on him too. No offense to John Liu, but
Yeah,
like I ain't wearing shorts.
No, I tell you, John's got nicer legs than LeBron, in my opinion.
Sure. Okay, let's move on. Do you have anything else before we wrap it up here?
No, long show today. Shout out to Frank for joining us here. We already handled our Betway stuff. Tomorrow, special guest joining me in studio. You're taking the day off, as you typically do. Take at least 4 days off a week. You're not going to be in here tomorrow doing whatever you're up to tomorrow. So I'm riding solo-ish tomorrow, which I'm excited about.
All right, we'll wrap it up there. I'm pulling up the Burt cam before I close it out. We'll wrap it up there. For my co-host, Chris Faber, and our technical producer, Aaron Burdotto. Our thanks again to Frank Seravalli for joining the show, and thank you to you, the listener and the viewer, for joining us for another episode of the Canucks Conversation.
Woo!
Thanks for listening to Canucks Conversation. Hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.
How about keep it to a thank you, Jim?